war in Gaza has become a major issue for the upcoming presidential election. Just this week, 3 protesters interrupted President Joe Biden's visit to Raleigh. They shouted their support for Gaza and called for a ceasefire. WRAL's Eric Miller talked with protesters and WRAL's Capitol team about what this means for the presidential election in a swing state like North Carolina.
The protesters spoke and the president responded.
We need to get a lot more care into Gaza.
But for Samira Haddad and Swarnali Sengupta, that sentiment only goes so far.
We need to stop sending weapons to Israel. We need to stop bombing.
Haddad and Sengupta were 2 of the protesters who interrupted President Biden.
We voted him into office. We have the power to vote him out.
They're not the only ones who've lost faith in the last 4 years.
It's over for Biden. It's over.
Abdullah Khadra is an imam at the Medina Quran and Youth Center in Raleigh. He was one of more than 100 protesters who stood outside Biden's Raleigh speech. Khadra says he encouraged others in the Raleigh area Muslim community to vote against Trump in 2020. But his message now is different.
I'm giving sermons reminding people not to vote for genocide.
And that could pose a real problem for the president. A recent WRAL news poll found Trump with a 50% to 45% lead over Biden in North Carolina, with 5% of voters undecided.
To get undecided voters, you have to give them something to vote for.
Biden has proposed building a makeshift port in Gaza to bring in emergency aid. Vice President Kamala Harris called for a temporary ceasefire. And the U.S. abstained from a United Nations Security Council vote this week that allowed the UN to issue its first ceasefire demand in Gaza. But at the same time, the U.S. continues sending Israel billions of dollars in military aid and says NCCaptiol teams Will Dorn, the fine line the president's walking could pose a real problem with younger voters who are especially sympathetic to Palestinians.
If young voters decide not to come vote at all because they're not really happy with either candidate on the ballot, that is going to probably hurt Democrats running up and down the ballot.
Back on the protest line, Imam Abdullah Khadra says if President Biden wants to win back support, he'll have to do something drastic and soon.
If he really does something tangible, something that people can see, not only words, then I think maybe some people will change.
In Raleigh, Eric Miller, WRAL News.